It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, our top story. The Prime Minister says the UK now formally recognises Palestine, and he hopes it will revive the prospect of a two-state solution.
We must channel our efforts, united together in hope, behind the peaceful future that we want to see.
But Israel says the Prime Minister's decision is absurd and there will be no Palestinian state. Also tonight, President Trump to speak shortly at a memorial service in Arizona for the murdered activist Charlie Kirk. Plus, the Lib Dem leader Ed Davey renews his war of words with Elon Musk, calling him a criminal. How the Duchess of York called Jeffrey Epstein a supreme friend just weeks after publicly disowning him in 2011. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30. Good evening. The Prime Minister has announced that the UK now formally recognises a Palestinian state in a historic, if largely symbolic, move. Sir Keir Starmer says he hopes it will revive hopes of peace for Palestinians and Israelis with the prospect of a two-state solution for the Middle East. Palestinian leaders have welcomed the UK's decision, but Israel says it's absurd and merely plays into the hands of Hamas. We'll have more on the international reaction in a moment, but first, our political correspondent Rob Powell reports on the Prime Minister's announcement.
Anger and outrage. Protests that swept the UK, calling for the killing in Gaza to stop and for the plight of Palestinians to be recognised. Now, the UK has moved to formally recognise a Palestinian state.
We recognised the State of Israel more than 75 years ago as a homeland for the Jewish people. Today, we join over 150 countries who recognise a Palestinian state also. A pledge to the Palestinian and Israeli people that there can be a better future.
Within minutes of the announcement, the government's map, once labelled as the occupied Palestinian territories, now updated. Full diplomatic relations are promised too, a beefed-up UK presence here, a new UK embassy and ambassador potentially coming as well. But with a ceasefire way off, never mind a two-state solution, this move is still mainly symbolic.
Tell you why this is not entirely clear. You're saying you're going to recognise two states, because you already recognise Israel. Where's the other one come from?
Trevor.
What's its borders?
Trevor, your viewers know that any decision to recognise a Palestinian state does not make a Palestinian state happen overnight. That has to be part of a peace process.
With David Lammy today, the Palestinian head of mission, now referring to himself as the ambassador. The UK acting alongside Canada and Australia, not wanting to be left behind as the international consensus shifts. Ministers used to talk about recognition coming when the conditions for a two-state solution were in place. Not anymore. Sir Keir Starmer is now trying to use this to pressure Benjamin Netanyahu to end the fighting in Gaza and allow more aid in. But with the US fiercely critical of this move, it's hard to see how it will change much in Israel.
Let them go! Let them go!
After the killing of October the 7th, the Prime Minister has also insisted Hamas can play no part in a Palestinian state and must release the remaining hostages. But families of those taken struggle to see how this weekend's announcement will help achieve that or a ceasefire.
All we ask for is, as families of hostages that remain in Gaza, is that they are at the centre of every decision. And it's difficult to see how this current decision puts the hostages at the centre, or any decision to continue with military offensives in Gaza.
Sir Keir Starmer has also been under pressure from his own party to move faster on recognition, the Conservatives accusing the government of rewarding terror.
What has happened is that Keir Starmer's backbenchers and members of his cabinet have forced him into this position to make this move and has taken leverage off the table, and that's not good foreign policy.
The Deputy Prime Minister will now fly to the United Nations to formally announce the change. He won't be met with universal approval. Divisions will be on show here, complicating the way forward. Rob Powell, Sky News in Westminster.
Well, with Canada, Australia and Portugal joining the UK today, 151 of 193 UN member states now recognize a Palestinian state. But membership of the United Nations still seems unlikely, with America remaining opposed to Palestinian statehood. So will the UK's move mean that anything will change on the ground? Well, the UK says a Palestinian state should be based on territory contained in what is known as the 1967 borders, comprising Gaza and the West Bank, with Jerusalem as a capital shared with Israel. In Gaza, home to 2 million Palestinians, Israel is continuing its military campaign against Hamas in the wake of the 7th of October attacks. Israel's military says it intends to take over all of Gaza. The West Bank, which is home to 3 million Palestinians, has been occupied by Israel since 1967. The Palestinian Authority exercises limited self-rule. Israeli settlers have built homes within the West Bank and the East Jerusalem, with an estimated 700,000 Israeli settlers living there today. And the UN says the settlements contravene international law. But Israel says the settlements will be expanded into an area of the West Bank known as E1. Critics say the project would cut off the West Bank from East Jerusalem, and so ending hopes of a viable Palestinian state. Meanwhile, those opposed to Palestinian statehood say it fails to meet the criteria laid down by the Montevideo Convention of 1933. That convention says a state must have a permanent population, a defined territory, effective government, and formal diplomatic processes. Whether or not a Palestinian state could meet all these criteria is fiercely contested. Well, the UK's decision to recognize Palestine as a state has met with backlash from Israel. The country's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, described the decision as absurd, insisting there will be no Palestinian state. But Palestinians have welcomed the UK's move. Our Middle East correspondent, Adam Parsons, reports.
On the ground in Gaza, it doesn't feel like anything has changed. Britain may now define this as part of the state of Palestine, but it's still a war zone, battered by the Israeli military, much of it reduced to waste. Recognition won't stop the attacks here or bring back the dead. But the Palestinians believe that recognition will give them more diplomatic heft.
This also sends a very clear message of hope to the Palestinian people who are facing an existential threat. Israel always claims that we are under an existential threat. Today, it is the Palestinians who are under this existential threat, and we need to raise our voices on this threat.
On the West Bank, anger with Israel runs deep. This man's family were displaced in 1948, and he still wants to go back to his ancestral home.
What do you think is Israel and what is Palestine?
In fact, we don't accept Israel. We don't recognize Israel. This is all Palestine. Sooner or later, it will be Palestine.
For Israel, it is these threats that bolster a sense of fear and defiance, convinced that recognition of Palestine will embolden Hamas.
I have a clear message to those leaders who recognise a Palestinian state after the terrible massacre of October 7th. You are giving a huge prize to terrorism. And I have another message for you. It will not happen. There will be no Palestinian state west of the Jordan. For years, I have prevented the establishment of this terrorist state in the face of enormous pressure both from home and abroad. We did it with determination, and we did it with political wisdom. Indeed, we doubled Jewish settlement in Judea and Samaria, and we will continue on this path.
Families of hostages have condemned the recognition, saying it threatens the lives of their loved ones. Even Netanyahu's political rivals echo his sentiments.
Well, I don't think the United Kingdom is in a place to give us conditions. Who does Starmer think he is?
Just as Britain confirmed its decision, so Israel sent more troops into the rubble of the Gaza Strip, as part of its huge offensive. The power of diplomacy is being balanced against the might of military muscle. Adam Parsons, Sky News, Jerusalem.
Our political correspondent Rob Powell joins us live now from Downing Street. Rob, this has been an issue for decades. So why has the Prime Minister recognised the Palestinian state now?
Yeah, I think there's a mix of reasons. Back in July, when Keir Starmer first signalled that this was a route he was going to go down, you sense that we are entering a period where Western states, Western allies of Israel, apart from the US obviously, were becoming more critical about the actions of Israel in Gaza, and frankly, recognition of a Palestinian state was one of the diplomatic levers, one of the few diplomatic levers they had to express their unhappiness in action rather than words. The hope was, and still is, that it would galvanise other countries to pile pressure on Israel to stop the fighting. But there's some evidence already that it may be having the opposite effect. Tonight, one Israeli official has told Sky News that in response to the announcements of recognition today, Israel could consider annexing the West Bank either in part or in whole. And tonight, in addition to that, the Israeli Foreign Minister, Gideon Saar, hasn't been on the phone to anyone here in Number 10, but rather he's been phoning Sir Keir Starmer's political opponents in the Tory leader Kemi Badenoch and the Reform leader Nigel Farage to signal his unhappiness about what has happened. I think what other countries were doing matters hugely in terms of the timing as well, though. We saw France break first out of this pack to signal its intention to recognise a Palestinian state. And I think if we were in a situation where countries like Australia and Canada, that the UK has tended to stick pretty close to when it comes to Middle Eastern foreign policy, if they were moving to recognise Palestine and the UK wasn't, well then Sir Keir Starmer would be heading into his party conference in a week or so's time with massive upheaval and unrest from many of his members. And I think that domestic politics plays a big role as well. For Labour supporters, right the way from Labour voters up to cabinet ministers, the Palestinian cause is really close to their heart. It runs through a lot of their politics. And there was huge pressure being put on Keir Starmer from them to move faster on this. Many felt that he hadn't been critical enough of Israel at an earlier stage of the conflict, that he was too slow to call for a ceasefire in Gaza as well. And then there's the electoral context to this. In the general election last year, you had Labour MPs losing their seats to independent candidates standing on a pro-Palestine platform. Now, that will likely happen again, or could happen again in the next general election, and there are many more MPs, including cabinet ministers, being threatened by similar candidates standing on a very pro-Palestine platform. But I think that question of timing is one of the most difficult ones for the government to answer credibly, because Palestinian recognition has been a long-time Labour pledge. It was in the manifesto, but the position was always that it would be done at a time of maximum impact. And I think it's that point which is very difficult to see at the moment, because with a ceasefire seeming far away, with a two-state solution and peace process seeming very far away as well, it's hard to argue that this will have much practical, tangible impact. So yes, this is mainly about symbolism, but it's powerful symbolism, and powerful symbolism that really matters to people on both sides of this debate.
Rob Powell live from Downing Street. Rob, thank you. Let's go to the United States now, and President Trump is due shortly to pay tribute to Charlie Kirk at a memorial event in his honor in Arizona. Mr. Kirk, a conservative commentator, was shot dead at a rally earlier this month. You can see live pictures there, and the president, of course. Let's go to our correspondent, James Matthews, who is in Glendale, Arizona. And James, you couldn't really get a more powerful lineup than the one at this memorial, could you?
Yeah, they've all been rolled out. The Trump administration top tier, Barbara, right up to the headline act. Donald Trump, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Health Supremo is on stage at the moment. We've had Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, Pete Hegseth, Secretary of State for Defense. Elon Musk, he's knocking about. We won't see him on stage. Right now, he is up in the gods in an executive box, cheerfully shaking hands with the president. He has presidential duties on his plate, unbothered clearly right now by criticism from Ed Davey at the Lib Dem conference about his input into UK politics. But yeah, Donald Trump due in about an hour. We've heard from Stephen Miller, the Deputy Chief of Staff. I think he came closest to this business of division, Barbara. Clearly, that is an issue in the wake of the assassination of Charlie Kirk. I think all speakers so far have struck a pretty neutral ground. But Stephen Miller, a man who a month ago described the Democratic Party as a domestic extremist organisation, where he said those trying to incite violence against us, those trying to foment hatred against us, you have nothing, you are wickedness, he said. So, final rhetoric from him. We will see if Donald Trump builds on his theme that the radical left, as he would put it, were to blame for the rhetoric that led to Charlie Kirk's assassination. He's due in about half an hour. Between now and then, Erica Kirk, Charlie's wife, will speak. And, you know, clearly this is laced with politics. Barbara, the White House wants to cement the vote that is in this stadium. More than 60,000 people, representative of a youth vote largely, a Christian nationalist vote largely, a vote that Charlie Kirk corralled behind Donald Trump, was influential in getting him back into the White House. Donald Trump wants to make sure that he locks that in, carries these people forward with him towards the 2028 election. Donald Trump Jr. taking the stage right now, Barbara, the president himself due soon.
James Matthews with the latest there from that memorial at Glendale, Arizona. James, for the moment, thank you. We will, of course, bring you that speech by Donald Trump that James was talking about as it happens. We are expecting it to start within the hour. But first, the leader of the Liberal Democrats has said Elon Musk is a criminal who must be held to account. Sir Ed Davey accused the billionaire of inciting violence at the recent Unite the Kingdom rally, as well as breaching the UK's online safety laws by allowing child sexual exploitation, self-harm and grooming content on his platform X. Our political correspondent Amanda Acas is at the Liberal Democrat conference in Bournemouth, and she sent us this report.
Sir Ed Davey spent the morning meeting bees as part of a Lib Dem conference focus on nature. But his stinging criticism of ex-boss Elon Musk calling for his arrest is what's captured the buzz.
He and his company have clearly broken the law. When you see the adverts that they are still allow on that are pushing videos of child sexual abuse, of grooming, of self-harm, these are clearly wrong. And we passed in Parliament the Online Safety Act to protect our children from these appalling videos and messages. And yet Elon Musk's team on X got rid of their child safety team, completely watered down their protections for our children. That's not acceptable.
Elon Musk may have left the White House, but he's been getting increasingly involved in British politics.
Let me introduce you to...
telling protesters at last week's Unite the Kingdom march to be ready to fight or die. And he does have history with Sir Ed Davey, calling him a craven coward and a snivelling cretin after the Lib Dem leader previously accused him of interference in UK democracy. Plenty of other political opponents have also picked a fight with Ed Davey on X. Rupert Lowe keen to defend the site's owner.
Elon Musk has been extremely good for free speech. His purchase of Twitter has ensured that we actually do have a genuine free speech platform, which has allowed the truth on many issues to come out. And in terms of the Online Safety Act, it is simply an attempt by what I would call the ancien regime, the old regime, to try and stifle free speech.
After years of debate, the Online Safety Act finally came into force in July, but the rows continued over the summer, with Reform accusing the government of censorship and ministers saying opponents were on the side of paedophiles. Sir Ed Davey's made his position very clear, but how concerned are voters here in Bournemouth?
My little boy, he accesses YouTube because he likes to watch it, and it's really hard to make sure that everything he's accessing is age appropriate, even with the blockage that I can put on it at home and the guards. So yeah, it's really concerning.
Where does it start from protecting our children and going into our personal space? Like, you know what I'm saying?
I think it's quite important for parents not to take back control, but to kind of be able to monitor what
their children are exposed to.
X haven't given us a specific response, but previously said they have zero tolerance for child sexual abuse material and that tackling child exploitation is a top priority. Ofcom say they're currently assessing companies' compliance with the law. But the debate over online safety is far from over. Amanda Akas, Sky News, Bournemouth.
It's been revealed that Duchess of York wrote an email to Jeffrey Epstein just weeks after publicly disowning him in 2011. Sarah Ferguson emailed the convicted sex offender and called him a supreme friend. Our royal correspondent Rhiannon Mills reports.
In recent years, she has appeared firmly back in the royal fold. Only on Tuesday seen with the rest of the family for the Duchess of Kent's funeral. But fast forward to this weekend, and Sarah Ferguson is at the centre of the latest Epstein scandal with a hugely embarrassing email from April 2011 in which she appears to grovel to the convicted paedophile. I know you feel hellaciously let down by me. I must humbly apologise to you and your heart for that. I was bedridden with fear, I was paralysed, I was advised in no uncertain terms to have nothing to do with you and to not speak or email you. And if I did, I would cause more problems to you, the Duke, and myself. The problem is, the month before it was sent, it came out that Sarah Ferguson had been given £15,000 by Jeffrey Epstein. At the time, she said she'd have nothing more to do with him. Her spokesperson, now claiming that she was taken in by his lies, has nothing but sympathy for his victims, and blackmail was the reason for the email. They said as soon as she was aware of the extent of the allegations against him, she not only cut off contact, but condemned him publicly, to the extent that he then threatened to sue her for defamation for associating him with paedophilia. She does not resile from anything she said then. Another example, some would say, of the lengths that people would go to keep Epstein on side.
This email is devastating, and I think this has to be the nail in the coffin for both of them. I mean, it shows, as I've been saying for a long time, that the relationship with Epstein not only began much earlier, but it continued much later than they claim. And it really belies all the statements that she made, claiming to have cut off contact with him. This is extremely damaging because it's showing that the royal family haven't gripped the Andrew and Sarah problem at all. They just put their head in the sands and hoped the problem would go away. And it's quite clear it's not going away, and something needs to be done.
It is, of course, her ex-husband, Prince Andrew, who's had the most difficult questions to answer regarding Epstein. He's always denied any wrongdoing. But there is a book due out at the end of October, written by Virginia Giuffre, Prince Andrew's accuser, before she died. The Duke of York wasn't there for Trump's state visit, but a reminder of Epstein was on the side of Windsor Castle. He is an unwelcome spectre that continues to haunt not just Prince Andrew, but the entire royal family. Rhiannon Mills, Sky News.
Tributes have been paid to the veteran broadcaster John Stapleton, who has died at the age of 79.
On Newsline tonight, one of the world's most influential and powerful politicians.
One of the original Sky News presenters, Mr. Stapleton fronted a range of news and current affairs programmes, including the BBC's Watchdog and GMTV's NewsHour. He died peacefully in hospital this morning, following a battle with Parkinson's disease, complicated by pneumonia. The government has given the go-ahead to a second runway at Gatwick Airport. The £2 billion project will be privately funded and aims to increase the airport's capacity by 100,000 flights a year. Gatwick says the plans will also create an additional 14,000 jobs, but opponents say expansion will drive up pollution and noise. Thousands of prison staff are to be given stab vests in a major overhaul of officer safety following a series of recent attacks. A further 500 officers will be trained in using tasers. And now it's time to get the latest sport from Sky Sports News and Alison.
Traveling is not just about the destination. It's also about how you get there. Fly Emirates, fly better.
It strikes me that it's changed an awful lot even in the last 10 or 15 years.
It wasn't very long ago. We had yourself, we had Sam Allardyce, Alan Pardew, Steve McLaren, Steve Bruce, Harry Redknapp, all of you competing amongst each other in the top division. And that was a decade and a half ago. It wasn't that long ago.
No.
So that seemed a heck of a change so quickly, doesn't it?
Well, you're talking about people pretty much the same sort of age as well, of course. You know, maybe that was a generation, wasn't it, you're talking of? You know, we were probably at quite an important part of our careers in that period, and after, with quite a long CV and a lot of clubs behind that we can refer to, which would suggest we can do this job. I mean, now, of course, you know, the focus is often on the younger coach, you know, and there's nothing wrong with that either. It's a young person's game, so I don't complain about that at all. But as a result, of course, when they're looking for a younger coach, these clubs, often they probably think they're going to find him abroad. The Premier League is becoming a force to itself. I mean, the amount of money, it reminds me of Italy when I was there, because Italy was a place where all the players were being attracted to and where the big money was. So there's been an enormous change. So that's where the Premier League is today. So any job that comes up in the Premier League is not going to be, well, here's a list of Englishmen who might be interested in the job or who might be candidates. You go out, well, who's at Bayern Munich at the moment? Who's at Barcelona? Who's at Real Madrid? Who's at PSG? Why don't we get one of those? Because you know that they can actually be attracted to the job, because the job is extremely well paid, and you're playing in a league which is, in most people's view, at least all English people's view, one of the best leagues in the world.
The Italian one is probably more tactical, defensive side. Spanish is more quality, more technique. And England is everything. It's physicality, it's strong, it's quality, it's all the best manager like Carlo Ancelotti, Pep, Klopp, the best manager in this moment in the world. They were all here in England. It's the toughest one for sure.
It is the league that everyone wants to be coach in. Pick one league, everyone will say, I want to coach in the Premier League if possible. It is extremely difficult. I think the level of coaching in the Premier League is insane. From every team. If you look at the details and the tactical level, I think is extremely high.
If you look at the opposition every week that you're facing, the quality, it's huge. Also of the coaches and the managers, how they can tweak things within the game, and you have to react to it. Those levels are world class.
The Premier League has long been a home for elite managers from right across the world. But in terms of English managerial representation abroad, that's still very poor. Just look at the number of games managed in the Champions League since 1992 across Europe. And not one of those coaches has managed over 5 knockout games in the...
Fly Emirates, fly better.
Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's papers in the press preview. When we come back, I'll be joined by Ava Santina Evans, political correspondent at Politics Joe, and Lucy Beresford, broadcaster and psychotherapist. Welcome both. Now, among the stories we'll be discussing, this on the front of The Guardian. Their headline, Starmer declares UK recognition of Palestine as independent state. We'll be right back.